First, I cut all the pieces for the legs over at the miter saw. I glued all the pieces together for each leg into a rough S shape. Then, once the glue dried, I used some screws for extra strength. And I wasn't trying super hard to make sure that all the holes were spaced evenly, because the edges of the legs were going to be painted over later. Then I cut curves into each leg with the jigsaw. Then I just sanded the edges of the curves so they didn't look so rough. There were still a couple of cracks in between the pieces, so to make it look like one piece, I just filled all the cracks with wood filler and sanded it flush. Next, I routed all the edges of each leg with a chamfer bit. I marked out and drilled holes where I would be putting screws in later to connect to the tabletop. Then, using what I had left of a sheet of edge-glued pine, I cut out all the pieces for the tabletop. Now I'm just marking out where I want the slot for the drawer to go. Again, with the same chamfer bit, I routed the top and the bottom of the tabletop. Now I'm making the drawer for the table, so the first thing I did was I cut two pieces of 2x4 to 10 inches. Then at the table saw, I cut each piece in half, then cut a 45-degree miter on each side of each piece. Next, for the bottom of the drawer, I cut some more pieces at 2x4 in half, and then cut those pieces to size to fit in the bottom of the drawer. Found this old piece of wood out in our garage. I think it's pine, so I cut it to size and I used that as the drawer front. But before I glued it on, I made sure to sand off all the gross, weird stuff on it. I cut a piece off of the wood I used for the drawer front, and I routed the edges to make a drawer pull. I glued the drawer pull on, and then I painted it white to match the edges of the legs. I glued the legs onto the tabletop and clamped them in place while I drove some screws in through the holes I drilled earlier. Now to make the bottom shelf, again, I'm cutting some piece of 2x4 in half on the table saw, and then I'm cutting 4 equal-sized pieces to go on the bottom. Once the bottom shelf had been nailed down, I filled in the nail holes with some wood filler and sanded them flush. I filled in all the holes I drilled with dowels, and then on the edges of the legs, I painted those white. I sanded everything on the table one last time before I put the finish on. Then everything that I didn't paint white, I finished with some polyurethane.